Hi, Camille. So good to see you. I'm going to add you as a co-host so that you have controls. So you should be able to share your screen anytime you're ready. Camille, I'm just making sure that you can hear me. I'll ask you to unmute.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect.
I don't know what was going on there. It was saying ask to be unmuted. Okay, here I am. Hi.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Good. Wait, I'm moving my hair. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Just so much after Christmas, just trying to get back into the swing of things, you know.
Looks like you all love Valentine's ready.
I do. I have 6 Valentine's Day trees up, and you know, I wait for every season. So yeah, it's up. There it is.
Good.
Yeah,
right.
But you can go down and share your screen whenever you're ready to get your PowerPoint up.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, can you see it?
I can. Do you want to go from the beginning so you can just be on the first slide when people come in?
Yes. Here I am. Okay, wait, I have to stop sharing. Give me a second because it's not cooperating.
Okay.
Come on. I've been having lots of issues with my PowerPoint, and it just like is stuck on the home screen and it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
I'll get it. Just it's very temperamental.
Okay.
Yikes. Now it went into a, oh boy. All right. I'll get it. I had it all up and ready, and I think when I leave it on, okay, when I leave a program open, it just like does these like weird things. I try again. It'll be good.
Are you sharing your screen?
I'm not, right? I hope not, right?
Yeah, share your screen and go down so you can put your PowerPoint back up on the because we can't see it.
Right. I have to, the problem is it's not opening. It's
Okay.
not going into like slide, you know, there you go. Try again. It should work this time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are getting Camille here. She is our speaker. She is getting her PowerPoint ready. We will start in about 5 minutes.
Tell me it's good.
It's perfect.
Yay.
Perfect. I saw that you had a second slide. Is that where you want me to introduce you?
Yeah, you can, or you can introduce me now. I was going to just do myself, but
Okay.
whatever you want.
Perfect. All right, then I'm going to go off screen. We will start in about 5 minutes.
Thank you. Be a good boy now. Okay, be a good boy. Be a good boy. Shh. Be a good boy. See, mommy is working now. Yeah, be a good boy. Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the speaker series for 2022. We've been absent for a couple of months, so thank you for taking time to come and learn about inclusion today. And we will get started in just a couple of minutes. We are going to let some people move over from another meeting, so welcome. Hi, everyone. We're right at the top of the hour, and I do not want to waste anyone's time. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here today with us. We've been gone for a month or two so that we could have Christmas break and just spend time reflecting and being with family and catching up on work. So we are back in January 2022, excited for a new year. And it's so exciting. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to record. Maybe. Oh, it's already recording. Perfect. Okay. Let's go ahead and, hey, Camille, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey, I'm going to introduce you. Thanks. So we are excited to have Camille with us today. Camille has been in the field of early childhood education for over 30 years, and next to her family, it's the most important thing in her life. She is a native New Yorker, born and raised in Brooklyn. Then she relocated to Long Island. She now lives in Arizona with her husband of 33 years and her rescue dog, Frankie. She has a daughter who is married and lives in St. Louis. Her long career includes teaching all ages from birth through age 6, center director, observer, coach, trainer, and instructor. She is an adjunct instructor at Central Arizona College in the early childhood department, as well as at the City University of New York, where she teaches online ECE administrator classes. So Camille, we are so thrilled to have you today. You've spoken to us many times. So thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shipley. I really appreciate it. And I love to come and do these sessions. Virtual works, and I love that people are everywhere. So you get to hear what I have to say. And I hope that what I'm sharing today is helpful and just puts a new light on what special education looks like here in the country. So I got a great introduction, so thank you so much for that. I also wanted to mention that I am very well wedded to NAEC, and I've been on some sort of NAEC board for probably 25 years now, and I just ran again in our new election, and so I will still be serving on the Arizona AEYC board, doing treasurer again. So I always feel like being a part of a board and especially NAEYC, it just keeps me connected with everything that's going on in the field, and not just what's happening like in Arizona, but all over the country. So I just wanted to add that. So thanks for the introduction, and we'll just keep moving forward. So today, I hope that I will be able to introduce you to the DEC NAEYC Joint Position Statement. So DEC is the Division of Early Childhood, and NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Also, the NAEYC Advancing Equity in Early Childhood Education Position Statement. You'll be able to define early childhood inclusion and become familiar with strategies on using the position statements to implement early childhood services. So I just want to point out that education, our field is always evolving, it's always changing. And thankfully, that's due to research. And so over the past few years, there's been a lot of research done, both with NAEYC and DEC. So they both come out with new position statements. And while they're separate documents, there's a good amount of overlapping ideas. So we will be focusing on the DEC NAEYC joint position statement today, but I am going to include information regarding the new NAEYC Advancing Equity in Early Childhood. It's just, there's just so much that we're learning from society, and it's ever changing, and so we have to address the needs of the children that we care for, and that looks very different today than it did when I first started in the field 35 years ago. And I talk about it all the time that I did. So here's my confession: I did not go to school to learn. I didn't major in special education. Special education was it was a whole different plan of study when I was getting my degree. And so I chose for early childhood education, like gen ed. Now you have to be, you just have to be aware, and you have to understand what it really means to meet the needs of each and every child. So with that, I first want to talk about what is a position statement. And so position statements are, they're important tools. NAEC uses them, DEC uses them, CEC, the Council for Exceptional Children, they all have these position statements. And so these are tools to help to build an understanding and to support different topics and different ideas in the field. And usually these ideas are very controversial. And so these controversial issues that are related to early childhood, we need some kind of clarification and some kind of guidance when we're talking about these issues. So NAEC's position statements, how they come to be, and how typically any position statement comes to be, is based on what we call, it's like a comprehensive system. And so there's ideas written and they're put out for public comment. There's a consensus. They go back, there are revisions made, it comes back out again. And this kind of thing happens back and forth until we feel we got it right. It's really important to get it right. And because, like I mentioned before, all the research and the evolution of education, it could be right today, but in 3 or 5 or 10 years, it's just not right anymore. And so that's why they're always being revised. The NAEC position statements are advancing equity in early childhood. The NAEC Code of Ethical Conduct and Statement of Commitment. The professional standards and competencies for early childhood educators, and the newly revised developmentally appropriate practices. And so these position statements, if you look at what they each are, they are all controversial topics, right? So talking about developmentally appropriate practice, like what is that? Like, what does that look like? And it doesn't look the same here in Arizona as it does in, New York, for example. And so that's why they're controversial. People have opinions. People think, things are right, things are not. And so that's what happens with, that's why we need this clarification. So what they are: formal statement describing appropriate practices. They're developed through consensus building. So like I said before, they go back and forth for public comment. It's a description of evidence and ways to implement a practice. And it's an agreement with one or more organizations on a viewpoint or expectation of a practice. So, although NAEC happens to be the largest early childhood organization, they don't stand alone. They don't work alone. There are other early childhood organizations that, and DEC is one example, the Division of Early Childhood. They work together and they share ideas together. And so when, organizations should not work in a silo. They need the expertise of other organizations. And so that's the reason why they do this consensus building, and other organizations are involved in creating position statements. DEC has several position statements, and their latest is the multi-tiered system of support framework in early childhood education, descriptions and implementations. And that position statement just came out last year. Like I said, they have several. They have service coordinator in early intervention statements, toddler coordinator statements, low birth weight, prematurity, and early intervention position statement. And so there's in the references at the end of the presentation, I have links to the DEC website where you can find all of these position statements. So why do we even need these, right? It's a big thing, right? Everybody has these position statements, but why, what's the need? And so we really need to have them because we need a clear definition, right? I guarantee you, if you ask everyone here who is attending this session, define inclusion, I guarantee you everyone will come up with some different definition, right? So we need a clear definition of, terms, of concepts, of practices. We need to have a framework for that. We also need a description on implementing these practices. So if you, again, ask everyone who's attending here, tell me what your early intervention services look like. You'll get, however many people are in this session, 10, 20, you'll get 20 different answers. So we need some sort of a framework. We also need a position statement to give us a pathway for collaboration across disciplines and organizations. And like I mentioned before, and I think for me, it's a sensitive topic about organizations and agencies operating in silos. And I know that it was a reason for advocacy back in New York, and it was definitely is a reason for advocacy here in Arizona. And that actually is part of my work, even though I'm the treasurer of AZA EYC now, part of my work is the advocacy piece, and trying to break these silos is really difficult. So moving on, I just want to talk for a minute about the NAEC foundational documents. These are their 5 position statements, and these 5 position statements definitely fit a description of what a position statement is. They're each important tools that NAEC uses to build an understanding of support, and they are all controversial issues. There's the developmentally appropriate practices, and I know that in my classes, that's always a resource for the classes that I teach for UAGC, and for all of my classes, wherever I teach, it's almost like, like our Bible. We look at it, we use it, we read it, we reference it. And I think that the new developmentally appropriate practice book that just came out and the new standards that came out last year were a long time coming. And there is a difference. And so, like I had mentioned before, what was developmentally appropriate 10 years ago or 20 years ago it looks different. We do have to address what's happening in society with the children and families that we serve. So the developmentally appropriate practices is one statement. The professional standards for competencies for early childhood educators. So what we need to know to do our jobs. So that's what that addresses. Code of ethical conduct, which has been around for a very long time and has had revisions. And I want to say the latest revision was a while. And I know that that's talk that they're looking to work on that one. Advancing equity in early childhood education is, again, we'll talk about. And the NAEC early childhood program standards. So what those are, that's the document or the tool that NAEC uses for the accreditation process. And I am very involved in NAEC accreditation. I'm actually working with 2 programs now, supporting them through the system. And so those standards help us to identify what quality childcare is and how we should be providing it. So those are the statements there. Here's the joint position statement. So the division for early childhood is an offshoot, actually, of the Council for Exceptional Children. And so DEC, along with NAEC, in 2009, so it has been a while, created this joint position statement. And it's early childhood inclusion, and it was created to clarify and identify appropriate practices within early childhood inclusion. And so it's divided into different sections. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these sections, and then we're going to talk about how we can use this document to help us guide our work. So first thing, definition of early childhood inclusion. What is it? And I have to say that I love this graphic, and I'm very visual. And so when I found this, I was like, okay, I use it everywhere. And so if you look at the top circle with everybody all combined, all the little green circles and all the little red and the blue and the yellow, they're all mixed together. They're all, you don't see any separation. And that is the true meaning of inclusion. Exclusion is when the red, blue, and yellow dots are outside, right? Segregation is when they're outside, but they're all grouped together. And then there's integration, where you keep them all together, but you include them in the group. And they're not blending in. So in the position statement, this is how inclusion is defined. Early childhood inclusion embodies the values, policies, and practices that support the right of every infant and young child and his or her family, regardless of ability to participate in a broad range of activities and contexts as full members of families, communities, and society. The desired results of inclusion experiences for children with and without disabilities and their families include a sense of belonging and membership, positive social relationships and friendships, and development and learning to reach their full potential. Now, I want to point out this last sentence. The defining features of inclusion that can be used to identify high quality early childhood programs and services are access, participation, and supports. Now, that last sentence, which is in this position statement, the joint position statement, has changed in the advancing equity for early childhood education. And so that last sentence that whole definition is the same, except for that last sentence, which has now been replaced by this. Although the traditional focus of inclusion has been on addressing the exclusion of children with disabilities, full inclusion seeks to promote justice by ensuring equitable participation of all historically marginalized children. So you see how that wording has changed. And again, that wording was changed because of how society is changing and how research has made us more aware of why we need to update that definition. And so when we look at historically marginalized children, when we talk about marginalized groups are treated less important or inferior through the policies or practices that reduce members' economic, social, and political power. So when you think of marginalized children, and you think about, inclusion, you do want everyone to be included. You want to meet the needs of every child. And so when we talk about this new focus, I think, I was happy to see it because it's not just talking about the access, participation, and supports, which are all important, and we will discuss what that means, but it puts the focus on the marginalized child. And whether you're working with children directly or not, that the children and families, they're everywhere. And now now we're okay to talk about it, I think, is what's the most important. Like, they were always there, but we never addressed it. And so I do appreciate in the revision and in the advancing equity that the definition of early childhood inclusion has been changed, or revised, I should say, not changed, but revised. Okay, so again, in the DEC and the UAC joint statement, we talk about access, participation, and support. So when we look at access, we're talking about universal design, right? So we're letting, there's lots of opportunity, and it's, the opportunity is for everyone. So we talk about universal design with regard to access. When we're talking about participation is full access to activities, full participation with peers and adults. It's, children can be included in all of the experiences that are being provided in the classroom. And are there accommodations that need to be made? Absolutely. But still, the children have full access to these experiences. When we talk about support, we're looking at the support and what training, what guidance is out there. I can tell you from my own experience as a student 35 years ago, I think I had to take like one class in special education, and that was it. And then I was good to go. And yeah, I was going for a gen ed degree, but the accessibility to what I needed to learn to work with children that had developmental delays, I didn't have that. I didn't know that. And so I had to rely on, and I was very fortunate that the director of my program when I was a teacher and where I worked was a special education, she had her degree in special education. She was a special educator. So she was my go-to. I did have a support system. I had a person, but I didn't have training. And there were, I think the only training that was available was like challenging behavior. And is that really, I shouldn't say it's not helpful. It is helpful, but does that really get to the root of the problem? No, it does not. And so we need that support. I will say that one of the links that I have at the end are the Division for Early Childhood. They have professional development, and there's lots of professional development available on their website. So you take a look. Today, yes, there is a lot more. There's more availability. There's more access to training. There's, I think it's more of a focus. And, again, whenever I have to, if anybody ever asks me my own like personal opinion about, oh, should I go for special education or should I go for just, gen ed? I always say special education, because even though you're a gen ed teacher, because of the increase in the number of children that are coming into classrooms with IFSPs and IEPs, you have to know how to service these children. I mean, you just have to have that information and you have to have that knowledge base. Doesn't make you a special education teacher or an expert or anything like that, but you at least need to have the basic understanding of how to help each child. It's like not fair to the children and the families if you don't have that background. So moving on here. I want to give some recommendations for using this position statement to help improve improve early childhood services overall. And so there are 6 within this document. These are the 6 recommendations within the document. So there are 6 recommendations, and this is exactly how it is worded. And let me go through it, and then we're going to discuss it a minute. There are 6 recommendations framed around the definition and understanding of best practices of early childhood inclusion. So number 1 is to create high expectations for every child to reach his or her full potential. Number 2 is to develop a program philosophy on inclusion. Number 3 is to establish a system of services and supports. Number 4 is to revise program and professional standards. Number 5 is to achieve an integrated professional development system. And number 6 is influence federal and state accountability systems. So now you might have noticed that I have highlighted the word best, right? It's in bold. And here's the question for all of you. Who are these practices best for? Think about it. When we talk about best practice, who are they best for? Are they best for the 18-month-old in an early Head Start program in Burlington, Vermont? Are they best practices for a 24-month-old in Naples, Florida? Are they best practices for a toddler receiving EI services in New York City? Who are these practices best for? So again, after questioning that word and putting that word best up for debate and public comment and drafts and draft revisions and more public comment, it was determined that the word best will no longer be used when referring to practices. So it was something that I was part of in this whole big discussion of using the word best and opinions and all of that and comments. And I have to tell you that after saying best practices for like 34 years, it's hard not to say it anymore, because I think, first of all, for me, it's habit. I'm going to be saying it forever. But I also think that when we said best practices, we had, we didn't have the open lens. We didn't look at the word best from an open lens. So just so you know, and I pointed this out because I know a lot of my students, when they are responding to a discussion, they'll say in best practice. And I'm like, okay, here you go. You can't use the word best anymore. It's like no longer used. We say appropriate, developmentally appropriate practice, but it's no longer a thing to use best practices. So I just wanted to point that out. So let's go through these one at a time. The first was to create high expectations for every child to reach his or her full potential. A definition of early childhood inclusion should help create high expectations for every child, regardless of their ability, to reach his or her full potential. I mean, and think about it. If you've, I think it's almost like scaffolding, right? When you have a child and you want to let them try, like try harder. And, if you try harder, then you'll get there. It might take you a little longer, but you'll get there. Don't think that, and again, here, recognize the potential for implicit bias that can lead to lowered expectation. Because a child has a learning disability, because a child has, an IEP or an IFSP, does that mean that you lower your expectations for that child? Is that fair to them? I mean, they can still have high expectations. So shared expectations can in turn lead to a selection of appropriate goals and support the efforts of families. Families want their kids to succeed. We all know that families have a hard time if they have to hear that message that, like there's a challenge with your child's learning, there's a challenge with your child's development. That's a hard pill to swallow for any parent. And parents bring their kids into the world. I have the utmost respect for every parent. And I really truly believe that they want their child to be the best, right? If you're a parent, you want your kid to be the best. And when somebody tells you your kid can't be the best right now, it's hard. It's hard to take. So just because they can't be the best right now, it doesn't mean that they can never be the best. They could be the best they can be. And so don't lower those expectations. Don't do that to the child. It's not fair to the child or for their family. So children should be motivated to understand or do what's just beyond their current understanding of mastery, right? So again, that's like the scaffolding part of it. You want to create high expectations for every child. You want to provide support that leads to success. And I keep using that word scaffolding, but that's really what it is. It's those baby steps. And we use those steps with typically developing children. So it's just at a different level. It really shouldn't look any different. And what you're doing when you scaffold, you're layering the foundation for their next challenge. Peer learning, right? Children who are have a learning disability or have an IEP, IFSP, they should be able to scaffold each other, right? Kids can do that. And children should be able to have provided to them that additional support when they need it. So that's what creating high expectations for every child to reach his or her full potential should look like. Next on the list, develop a program philosophy on inclusion. So if you're in a program or if you've seen parent handbooks, staff handbooks, is there any philosophy around inclusion in there? I tell you, I see some. I actually see it a lot in Head Start handbooks, but I've helped programs develop a program philosophy on inclusion to include in their handbooks, because if it's there and you have a statement and a philosophy around inclusion up front, teachers know what they have to do, parents know what to expect. And I have an example here of a statement from the Grand Island Public School Early Learning Center, and their philosophy is the inclusion of preschoolers with differing abilities and from diverse cultures enhances learning opportunities for all children about caring, acceptance, and interdependence with others. And when I read this, it reminds me of my teaching days, which seems like a lifetime ago, and it was. I was a preschool teacher. I taught 4-year-olds, and we had 2 4-year-old classes. And the school district approached my director, and they tried a pilot. They did a pilot program. And what the pilot looked like was they wanted to use one of the 4-year-old classrooms, preschool classrooms, for like an inclusion program, right? And so they wanted to have a special education teacher. They would provide the special education teacher, and along with the teacher in the classroom, back then, if you were breathing, you were a teacher. And so they had the teacher in the childcare center, the special education teacher from the district, and they had children with IEPs in that classroom. And so the support system was there. They had speech therapists, they had OT, PT, all the support was there for that classroom. I wanted to be that classroom, and it was so sad I was not. And that would have been a fabulous learning experience for me, but also for my children. The sad part of this is the reason I was not chosen as the teacher to have that inclusion program brought in was because the parents of the children who were slotted to be in my classroom for that following year, they serving the 3-year-old parents, they did not want their children in with children with IEPs because they thought that it would bring down the teaching that would happen in the classroom. And they felt that like the standards would be lowered. Again, you're talking 30 years ago. And it was really so sad. The kids in the other classroom had a fabulous experience. The kids had a fabulous experience. The teacher in that classroom that worked in the childcare center learned so much, so many strategies, so many things. And, it's just sad. So your program, or there should be a program, philosophy on inclusion and how you view inclusion, and what it's going to look like. And again, here, revisit and revise when appropriate. This program, philosophy on inclusion, can be part of a program's their philosophy statement. There could just be a blurb about inclusion. It doesn't have to be a separate thing, or it's part of the program philosophy, and so that should be included within there. Sorry, I felt like I was rambling a little bit there. Sorry about that. The next point here is to establish a system of services and supports. And so when you have, the child and the family is the center of everything, right? And that's who you're supporting, and that's the services that you need. And so is there, is there an early childhood program that, is working or supplying those services and supports for the child and the family? Is it a Head Start program? Is it home visiting? What about the community resources? Do you make them available to the family? EI, early intervention, or preschool special education. The pediatrician has to be part of this whole system too, right? So we all work together. It's not independent or separate. There has to be a system, and one system has to support the other. And I think that's the key here, that the focus is on the access and the participation and the infrastructure. You have to have a strong infrastructure of support in order for the child and the family to be successful. The next is to revise program and professional standards. And so what you see here is the Council for Exceptional Children, their standards. The center is a snippet of the Division for Early Childhood standards. And on the right is the NAEC standards. And the CEC, DEC, and NAEY standards, and again, there's a link to this document, they're aligned, right? So there's an initial standards alignment. And what you want to do here is you want to make sure that your program, and it's all about the program, like, what do you expect from your teachers? Do you expect them to understand what it means to, do you expect your teachers to have the knowledge behind child development? Right. And so, of course, those are the classes that I teach at child development. But, you know, and I always say what makes a successful teacher is that they have a good handle on child development. And I'm very open in sharing my stories about how, you know, like I taught preschool for so long, I taught infants for so long, and I taught toddlers for like 3 days. And the reason, and I am so honest about this, the reason that I was not a successful toddler teacher is because I did not have my head wrapped around toddler development. My expectations were off. I was expecting them to be like little preschoolers, and that's not the reality. So what are the requirements? Like, what do you expect your teachers to know? And here is the alignment. So whichever organization you're looking at, they're all together on this. They understand that there's a knowledge that teachers need to have in order to be successful in working with children. And it's, you know, it's just not fair. I know I sound like you know, it's just like the passion in me. I think it's just not fair to have children in your program if you don't have the staff to help, you know, to work with them and understand what they need. It's all about an understanding here. So again, revise your program and professional standards. And this is like another little, somebody shared this graphic with me. And again, you know, like I'm so visual, but this really, I could like really relate to this little graphic here. You have to achieve an integrated professional development system. And so the infrastructure at the bottom, which is the soil here, right? You see these little gears in the soil, and they all kind of have to work together in order to make these various flowers grow. And so you need collaborative efforts across each part of the system. You know, IDEA Part C, which is the program administered by states that services infants and toddlers with developmental disabilities, cannot operate separately from child and family child care or pre-K programs, because it has to, and then Part 619, which is the funding for preschoolers, right? Who, you know, Part 619 funds special education services for preschoolers. It can't be separate. It all has to work together. So in order for that to be like a smooth and comprehensive system, I guess is the best way, that infrastructure, those gears have to keep going. There has to be professional development in order to make these flowers grow. There has to be connections with professional organizations. You have to know what your professional organizations are doing. And so, you know, again, your program can't be a silo in and of itself. You need to be out there. You need to know what your organizations like the, you know, Council for Exceptional Children, Division of Early Childhood is doing, what supports they have, what professional development they have, how they can help you in helping your teachers become successful with the children in their care. And at UAC, you just need to have that support system, and you have to have a professional development system. And again, it can't work separately. Part C has to be aligned and has to work together with 619. It has to, and then indicator 3. It all has to work together. So next, the next step influence federal and state accountability systems. And so this is the advocacy piece. I think this is the piece I'm most passionate about. I go off on tangents and I just talk and talk and talk because I just talk from like my heart, you know. It's because of the passion when I see things that are just like not fair. And I see a lot of it. And I you know, I hate to say that, but I do see a lot of it. I see kids being, you know, kids in care that have teachers that don't understand or how to help them. So people don't understand that, like the way I talk, anybody could talk, you know, you all have your own story. Everybody has their own experience. And so that's really what advocacy is. And I know that there's a big thing now about telling your story and getting your voice heard. And it's true, you know, you just have to speak up and be an active participant. Be an active participant in your state NAEC or CEC or DEC state affiliate chapters. You affect policy. You do. You really, really do. Check out available reports. There's data everywhere. You know, as much as I sometimes am not a fan of always being on the computer, there's just so much out there. And again, you know, what affects you is on the federal level, on the state level, and on the local level. And sometimes the federal level or even the state level could be a little bit overwhelming. Start at home. Look at what's going on in your own community, in your own school district, and, you know, just see what's happening and attend a meeting, watch it virtually. Even if the meeting happened, watch it later, just so you're aware of what's going on, because it's our children, our families, and our profession that is suffering here. And, you know, I've been saying this for the past 2 years. It took a pandemic to make people understand that early childhood education is an essential workforce. And so really we all should take part in that, because if we don't, who will? You know, nobody's going to stick up for us. We have to take care of it ourselves. And again, advocacy, share your story. Your story matters. It doesn't matter, you know, like you can influence change. And I know it's really hard to say, but you can. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, right? You have stories. If you're a parent, parents have stories. Students have stories. If you're an early childhood student, right, you have your own stories. How hard is it for you to find, you know, a class on inclusion? Is it accessible to you? Can you afford it? Right? Is college affordable to you? So students have stories. Educators, we all know how we're all struggling now. I mean, I was just sharing how I didn't get back to Dr. Shipley till late last night because I was in a program that I am supporting through NAEC accreditation that is now closed because of COVID, and they didn't recover. We hope to open again soon, but you know how heartbreaking that is. These teachers work so hard over the past 2 years and or a year and a half, and now they have no kids, and now they have no staff, and now there's an empty building there. So everyone's story matters, and that's, I think, the biggest thing you can do as an advocacy effort. Okay, lots of resources. There are lots of resources here. The Advancing Equity position statement is here. Early childhood personnel center initial standards alignment. That's the graphic that you saw a couple of slides back that aligns the CEC, DEC, and NAEC standards. There's the Division for Early Childhood Professional Development website there. So you can navigate on that website and find professional development opportunities. There's the link to the joint position statement that we just went over today. An Advocate's Guide to Transforming Special Education. So this was a new link for me, and I found some very interesting information there. It does focus on, you know, kindergarten, it's, you know, school district special education in school districts, but it's still, very, again, we can't think of it early childhood, up to 5. Once you're 5, you're out of here. And it's not like that. It goes into the school, and we all, again, it's part of those gears. The DEC position statement. So if you go on that link, you'll see all of the position statements listed there, and you can click on any one to, read it, learn about it. Recommended practice modules. So here, this comes from the recommended practice modules from DEC, and you can look at each module separately. There's guides with a ton of information there. Practice-based professional prep standards for early interventionists and early childhood education. So again, that's on the DEC website, and it covers early intervention and early childhood special education. So that's what I have for you. So if there's any questions or anybody have anything, I don't know if there's anything in the chat. I hope I'm on time.
Camille, you did great. Yes. This information is so broad that, you can get confused listening to all of it. And so I'm so glad you're here, because you are an NAEYC person and you have this knowledge and you work with all the people that help to make these standards. And so if anybody has any questions, please come in the chat. I can also, if you want to raise your hand, I can take you off mute. You can come online. Camille is the best person to ask these questions, because she has the background and the knowledge that can really help you. So if you have anything, now's the time to ask.